The Murder of Meredith Kercher / Amanda Knox Case, Italy, 2007. Welcome back to Uncovering Crime Tales. Today, we delve into one of the most infamous and controversial true crime cases of the 21st century, the tragic murder of Meredith Kercher in Italy, and the shocking trial of Amanda Knox and Raffaele Sollecito. A story filled with mystery, media frenzy, and shocking twists, where truth and perception collided, leaving the world divided. Stay with us as we uncover every detail of this chilling case. Part 1: The Beginning. Meredith Susanna Cara Kercher was 21 years old when she moved from London to the medieval hilltop city of Perugia in central Italy in the fall of 2007. She was a bright, warm, and quietly determined young woman who loved literature, music, and travel. Friends remembered her as gentle and kind, someone who laughed easily but never tried to dominate attention. She had grown up in Calston, a suburb of South London, with her mother, father, and 3 siblings. Her decision to spend a year abroad was part of her degree in European Studies at the University of Leeds. Italy was a place she had long admired. Its history, language, and culture seemed to offer both adventure and safety. For Meredith, this was supposed to be a dream year. Perugia itself was a popular destination for foreign students. Its university for foreigners attracted young people from across Europe and America who wanted to immerse themselves in Italian culture. The cobblestone streets, the old stone arches, the hillside views over the Umbrian Valley, it was postcard beautiful. But beneath its charm, Perugia also had a reputation as a party town. Students flocked to bars, cheap pizzerias, and late-night clubs. Drugs circulated, casual romances flourished, and the quiet old city sometimes felt like an endless festival. When Meredith arrived, she found a shared house on Via della Pergola, a quiet lane just outside the city center. The house was divided into 2 apartments: the upper floor, where Meredith lived with 3 other young women, and the ground floor, occupied by a group of Italian men. Meredith shared the upstairs flat with 2 Italian women and 1 American, a 20-year-old from Seattle named Amanda Knox. Amanda Knox had come to Perugia only weeks earlier. She was also on a study abroad program, taking language courses, working part-time, and trying to carve out her independence. Amanda's personality contrasted sharply with Meredith's. Where Meredith was polite and reserved, Amanda was exuberant, sometimes to the point of being awkward. She played guitar loudly, practiced yoga in the living room, and seemed unconcerned with appearances. To some, she came across as quirky and free-spirited. To others, careless and immature. At first, Meredith and Amanda seemed to get along well. They shared the typical bond of young women abroad, navigating language barriers, figuring out public transport, exploring Perugia's nightlife. Meredith introduced Amanda to her circle of friends. Amanda, in turn, began dating an Italian computer science student, Raffaele Sollecito, who lived only a short walk away. He was 23, soft-spoken, with glasses and an introverted air. Their relationship was new but intense. Within a week, they were spending most nights together. The household dynamic, however, was complicated. Cultural differences, personalities, and habits created small frictions. Meredith preferred tidiness. Amanda was relaxed about cleanliness. Meredith valued privacy. Amanda was loud, sometimes bringing Raffaele over to spend the night. These were ordinary tensions of shared living, but in hindsight they would be dissected endlessly as if they foreshadowed tragedy. The autumn of 2007 in Perugia unfolded with the rhythm of student life. Classes during the day, parties at night, weekends spent wandering the narrow streets or traveling to nearby Florence or Rome. Meredith threw herself into her studies and enjoyed the friendships she was building. She was affectionate in emails to her family, describing the beauty of Italy and her excitement for the months ahead. She mentioned her housemates, describing Amanda with a kind but faintly puzzled tone. "Slightly unusual," she wrote to a friend, "but sweet." Amanda, meanwhile, documented her experiences in her diary. She wrote about Raffaele, about her struggles with the Italian language, about the freedom she felt living far from home. She was eager for connection, sometimes reckless in how she expressed herself. Friends from home would later say Amanda had always been different, not in a sinister way, but socially clumsy, sometimes naive. By late October, Meredith had begun to settle comfortably into Perugia life. She was close with her English flatmates, Sophie and Robin, and often spent evenings with them. Halloween of 2007 was a lively affair in Perugia. The city's students poured into bars and clubs, wearing costumes, drinking, dancing until dawn. Meredith dressed as a vampire and went out with friends. Amanda and Raffaele celebrated together. The city throbbed with music and laughter. No one could imagine that within hours, one of these young lives would be cut short. The following day, November 1st, was All Saints' Day, a public holiday in Italy. Classes were canceled, many shops closed, and the streets were quieter than usual. Meredith had dinner with her British friends and left around 9 p.m. to return home. It was a chilly evening, the kind that made the medieval stones of Perugia radiate a damp cold. Meredith said goodbye cheerfully and walked the familiar route back to Via della Pergola. She was expected to be home that night. She never made contact with her friends again. What happened inside the small, two-story house that night would become the subject of international scrutiny, speculation, and bitter controversy for years to come. The next day, November 2nd, began ordinarily for Amanda Knox and Raffaele Sollecito. They had spent the night together at Raffaele's flat. Amanda said she returned briefly to her own house in the morning to shower and collect some belongings. It was then, she claimed, that she noticed strange signs: the front door standing ajar, a few drops of blood in the sink, an unflushed toilet. At first, she thought little of it. Student houses could be messy, but the unlocked door and the blood made her uneasy. She returned to Raffaele's place and told him what she had seen. Later that morning, Amanda and Raffaele went back together. They tried knocking on Meredith's bedroom door, but there was no answer. Amanda grew nervous. They called one of Meredith's English flatmates, Philomena, who was away in Rome, to ask if she knew where Meredith might be. Philomena was alarmed. She urged them to call the police. By the time Philomena and her friends arrived, the situation had escalated. One of Meredith's bedroom windows was broken, shards of glass scattered below. Her door was locked from the inside. The Italian police arrived, at first assuming it was a burglary. But when they forced open Meredith's door, the reality was horrifying. On the floor, partly covered by a duvet, lay the body of Meredith Kercher. She was naked from the waist down, her throat slashed. Blood pooled on the floor and spattered the walls. The room was in disarray, clothes scattered, a broken window, bloodied footprints. The scene was violent, chaotic, and devastating. The discovery sent shockwaves through the group of students. Philomena and her friends wept in disbelief. Amanda was seen outside the house, hugging Raffaele, sometimes kissing him, behavior that struck some witnesses as strange given the gravity of the moment. Within hours, news of the murder spread across Perugia. A foreign student, a young woman, had been brutally killed in her own bedroom. The city's close-knit student community was thrown into panic. Who could have done such a thing? The police immediately launched an investigation. They began sealing off the house, collecting evidence and questioning those who lived there. The brutality of the attack suggested sexual violence. The broken window seemed to indicate a burglary gone wrong. Yet even in those early hours, doubts surfaced. The glass was on top of scattered items, suggesting the break-in might have been staged. Some doors had been locked from the inside. The house told a story, but it was messy, contradictory, and confusing. Meredith's family in London received the devastating call that evening. Her parents, Arline and John, were shattered. They had sent their daughter to Italy with pride, never imagining such horror. As the days unfolded, they would travel to Perugia, facing a media storm and a justice system that would entangle them for years. The case was barely hours old, but already suspicion was drifting. Police focused first on the people closest to Meredith, the housemates, the friends, the boyfriends. Among them, Amanda Knox stood out. Her demeanor at the crime scene, her statements to the police, and her visible closeness to Raffaele all seemed unusual. Where others were in shock, Amanda appeared to some eyes strangely detached, even cheerful. Whether this was a misunderstanding of cultural behavior or a clue to deeper involvement would soon become the most hotly debated question in the case. What was clear, however, was that Meredith Kercher had died in a brutal and terrifying way. The autopsy would later reveal multiple stab wounds, defensive cuts on her hands, and evidence of a violent struggle. The young woman who had come to Italy for adventure and education had been subjected to the most nightmarish fate imaginable. The streets of Perugia, once filled with laughter and students, now hummed with rumor and fear. The old city had become the center of one of the most sensational criminal investigations of the 21st century, and at its heart was a tangled web of youth, sexuality, jealousy, violence, and the blurred line between perception and reality. Part 2. Early investigation and rising suspicions. The discovery of Meredith Kercher's body shook Perugia to its core. Within hours, the two-story house on Via della Pergola was cordoned off, forensic teams moving in to collect evidence. Investigators walked through the scene carefully, noting the strange mixture of order and chaos. The broken window in one of the rooms suggested a burglary, yet valuable items, cash, jewelry, electronics, were untouched. The scattered glass lay oddly on top of the clothes, as though it had been thrown inward rather than shattered from the outside. Something about the scene felt staged. The autopsy confirmed what the police already feared. Meredith's throat had been slashed with a large knife, cutting deep enough to be fatal. She had multiple stab wounds as well as defensive injuries on her hands and arms, proof that she had fought fiercely for her life. Evidence suggested sexual assault. This was not a quick or clean killing. It had been brutal, prolonged, and terrifying. Italian investigators immediately began with the most obvious suspects, the people closest to Meredith: her housemates, her boyfriend, her friends, anyone who had access to the home or reason to be near her that night. Amanda Knox and Raffaele Sollecito were at the top of that list. Amanda told the police that she had spent the night of November 1st with Raffaele at his apartment. They had cooked dinner together, watched a movie, smoked marijuana, and gone to bed. Raffaele confirmed the same story, yet when pressed for details, inconsistencies emerged. The film they claimed to have watched didn't match. Their timeline of the night differed by hours. Amanda seemed unsure about when she had showered, when she had returned to her own home, or even whether she had been there at all. Police were struck not only by what Amanda and Raffaele said, but how they behaved. Amanda, in particular, appeared strangely at ease. Witnesses at the crime scene recalled seeing her kiss and cuddle Raffaele, laugh, even do cartwheels in the police station while waiting for questioning. To Italian investigators, accustomed to displays of grief, wailing, and solemnity, her behavior seemed callous, even suspicious. Was this the face of shock, or the face of guilt? The international press quickly caught wind of the murder. A British student killed in Italy, her American roommate suddenly under suspicion. This was headline material. Tabloids descended on Perugia, eager for lurid details. British papers mourned Meredith, portraying her as the perfect daughter, studious and kind. Italian and American outlets zeroed in on Amanda, painting her alternately as a free-spirited young woman or as something darker, a manipulative seductress hiding behind an angelic smile. The nickname Foxy Knoxy, a childhood soccer moniker, resurfaced and stuck like glue. Inside the investigation, pressure mounted. Forensics revealed blood traces in the shared bathroom, a kitchen knife from Raffaele's apartment that looked recently cleaned, and an unknown fingerprint. Yet the evidence was fragmented, confusing, and open to interpretation. Amanda was brought in for questioning multiple times. Each time her story shifted. Under intense, overnight interrogation, she suddenly implicated someone else: Patrick Lumumba, a Congolese bar owner in Perugia. Amanda worked part-time at his bar, and in her confused statement she claimed Patrick had gone to the house that night, that she had heard Meredith scream, that Patrick must have been responsible. The police acted swiftly. Patrick Lumumba was arrested, handcuffed in front of his family and customers. To investigators, Amanda's testimony seemed like the breakthrough they needed. A suspect, a motive, perhaps even an accomplice. But within days, Patrick's alibi proved ironclad. He had been working at his bar all night, serving customers who vouched for him. There was no way he could have been at the murder scene. The accusation collapsed and Patrick was released. Furious, he publicly declared Amanda had lied and ruined his life. His reputation, his business, his peace of mind, all shattered by a false accusation. The police, however, did not let go of Amanda and Raffaele. If anything, their suspicions deepened. Why had Amanda pointed the finger at Patrick? Was it a panicked attempt to deflect blame, or did she genuinely misremember events? Either way, her credibility was crumbling. Raffaele, too, cracked under pressure. In one interrogation, he admitted Amanda hadn't been with him all night as she claimed. Perhaps she had gone out. Perhaps she wasn't telling the truth. The case seemed to be tightening around the young couple until a new name emerged. Forensic tests revealed a crucial lead: DNA belonging to a man named Rudy Guede. Rudy Guede was a 20-year-old drifter originally from the Ivory Coast. He had lived in Italy since childhood, drifting between foster homes and odd jobs. In Perugia, he was known among students, sometimes friendly, sometimes suspicious. He frequented bars and clubs, played basketball, and had a reputation for petty crime, break-ins, theft, drug use. He had even been caught once with a knife. Traces of Rudy's DNA were found on Meredith's body, on her clothes, and in her room. His bloody handprint marked a pillowcase. His shoe prints matched those at the scene. It was undeniable. Rudy had been there. But Rudy was nowhere to be found. By the time his name surfaced, he had fled Italy, traveling north into Germany. Days later, German police arrested him on a train without a ticket. He was extradited back to Italy, where he gave his version of events. Yes, Rudy admitted he had been in Meredith's room that night. He claimed the two had been consensually intimate, kissing and fooling around when he had to use the bathroom. While he was gone, he heard Meredith scream. Returning in panic, he said, he saw a shadowy figure fleeing the house. Meredith lay bleeding on the floor. Rudy claimed he tried to help but was too terrified. He grabbed his things and ran. To the police, Rudy's story was full of holes. Why had he not called for help? Why had he fled to another country? And how could his bloody handprint and footprints be explained if he had simply stumbled upon the crime? Still, Rudy's presence at the crime scene was undeniable. Now investigators faced a tangled triangle: Amanda Knox, Raffaele Sollecito, and Rudy Guede. Were they all involved together in some twisted pact? Or had Rudy acted alone, and Amanda and Raffaele were merely eccentric and unlucky? The Italian prosecution advanced a sensational theory. The murder was the result of a violent sexual game gone wrong. According to their narrative, Amanda, Raffaele, and Rudy had been together that night, perhaps experimenting with drugs, perhaps inflamed by jealousy. Meredith had resisted. The group had turned on her, assaulting her, stabbing her, and finally silencing her forever. It was a theory that played perfectly into the media frenzy. The innocent British student, the angel-faced American roommate with a dark side, the Italian boyfriend under her spell, the drifter with a criminal past. It was lurid, scandalous, and tailor-made for headlines. For Meredith's grieving family, the circus was unbearable. They had lost a daughter in the most horrific way imaginable, and instead of clarity, they watched as the case turned into a theater of speculation. All they wanted was justice. Yet the deeper the investigation went, the more muddled the picture became. By late November, the police announced their conclusion. The murder of Meredith Kercher had been committed not by one, but by three people: Amanda Knox, Raffaele Sollecito, and Rudy Guede. It was a claim that would spark one of the most controversial and polarizing trials of the 21st century. Part 3: Trials and Media Frenzy. By December 2007, the Italian authorities had fully arrested both Amanda Knox and Raffaele Sollecito. Amanda was taken into custody in Perugia, placed in a holding cell where she faced days of intense questioning and isolation. The atmosphere was suffocating. Italian prisons were stark and intimidating, completely different from anything Amanda had ever experienced. She was young, naive, and in a foreign country where she struggled with the language and legal procedures. Every day seemed to stretch endlessly, and every moment was under the scrutiny of investigators and journalists alike. Raffaele, too, faced severe pressure. His parents flew from Italy to support him, but he was overwhelmed by the magnitude of the situation. The police questioned him relentlessly about his relationship with Amanda, his whereabouts on the night of November 1st, and every minute detail about the house, the parties, and his interactions with Meredith. Small discrepancies in his recollections fueled suspicion. Every pause, every hesitation was interpreted as a potential admission of guilt. Meanwhile, Rudy Guede's trial took a different path. Guede had been captured in Germany and extradited to Italy. His demeanor was defensive, almost aggressive at times. He acknowledged being in the house but maintained that he had not committed the murder. According to him, Meredith's death was a shock, and he had fled in panic. Forensic evidence, however, painted a different picture. His fingerprints were on Meredith's body, his DNA was found on her clothing, and footprints linked him directly to the scene. The Italian court moved quickly. In October 2008, Rudy Guede was convicted via fast-track trial. He received a sentence of 30 years, later reduced to 16 upon appeal. The court ruled that he had been directly responsible for Meredith's death, though the narrative remained complex. Rudy's trial was comparatively straightforward because the evidence against him was substantial and less entangled with conflicting statements from other suspects. Amanda Knox and Raffaele Sollecito, however, faced a much longer and more complex legal process. Their trial began in January 2009. The prosecution presented a theory that shocked many. The murder was the result of a sex game gone wrong, involving drugs, jealousy, and violence. Amanda, Raffaele, and Rudy had allegedly acted together to kill Meredith. Prosecutors presented forensic evidence, including traces of Amanda's DNA on the handle of a knife, thought to be the murder weapon, and Raffaele's DNA on Meredith's bra clasp. Defense lawyers challenged every piece of evidence. They argued that the crime scene had been contaminated, that forensic procedures were sloppy, and that the DNA evidence was circumstantial or flawed. They painted Amanda as a naive student caught in a nightmare, manipulated by circumstance, not involved in the violent act itself. Raffaele's defense highlighted his introverted and passive nature, portraying him as unlikely to commit such brutality. Despite the defense, media coverage intensified. Headlines in Italy, the US, and UK alternated between vilifying and sympathizing with Amanda. Tabloids ran stories implying that Amanda was calculating and dangerous, while other outlets portrayed her as a hapless young woman trapped by cultural misunderstanding and poor timing. Every courtroom gesture, every smile or frown, was scrutinized and dissected. Amanda's casual behavior during proceedings was interpreted as arrogance or callousness by some, innocence or cultural difference by others. The prosecution also presented testimony from witnesses who claimed to have seen Amanda near the scene or acting suspiciously around the time of Meredith's death. Some neighbors reported seeing her walking outside the house late at night, while others claimed to have heard raised voices. Raffaele's whereabouts were also questioned. The prosecution argued that he had not been truthful about his actions that night. The trial lasted for months. The atmosphere in the Perugia courthouse was tense and surreal. The public followed every twist and turn via live television and news updates. International media descended on the city, creating what many described as a circus-like environment. Meredith's family endured public scrutiny alongside their grief, while Amanda and Raffaele were subjected to intense pressure and isolation. In December 2009, the court reached its verdict. Amanda Knox and Raffaele Sollecito were both convicted of murder and sexual assault. Amanda received a 26-year sentence, while Raffaele was sentenced to 25 years. The verdict shocked the world. Many observers questioned whether the trial had been fair. Was the evidence sufficient to convict them beyond a reasonable doubt? Or had media sensationalism and circumstantial evidence created a narrative in which Amanda and Raffaele were guilty simply because they appeared different or suspicious? The verdict sparked international debate. Human rights organizations and legal experts criticized the prosecution and forensic handling of the case. Comparisons were drawn between the speed of Rudy Guede's conviction and the complexity of the Knox-Sollecito case. Critics argued that Italian law allowed for a trial and appeal system that could take years, often putting defendants through repeated scrutiny and public humiliation. Amanda and Raffaele both maintained their innocence throughout the trial. Their defense teams worked tirelessly to point out inconsistencies in witness statements, mishandling of DNA evidence, and procedural errors by investigators. Yet the court initially found the prosecution's narrative compelling enough to warrant conviction. Even within Italy, opinions were divided. Some locals insisted that the foreign students had behaved oddly, that their behavior warranted suspicion, and that justice had been served. Others argued that the case had become a morality tale, unfairly punishing young women who did not conform to cultural norms. Through it all, Rudy Guede's conviction was considered definitive. He had admitted to being present, and the physical evidence linked him conclusively to the scene. Yet questions remained. If Rudy acted alone, why had Amanda and Raffaele been convicted? If the trio truly acted together, what motivated the attack, and how much did each individual contribute to the crime? The first trial ended, but the story was far from over. Appeals loomed, forensic reports would be challenged, and public opinion continued to polarize. Meanwhile, Meredith Kercher's family sought solace and justice, hoping that eventually the truth would emerge clearly from the tangled web of allegations, evidence, and media narratives. The case, already international in scope, had become a cautionary tale about crime perception and the way media can shape a narrative before courts reach a final judgment. Amanda Knox, a young American student, became a symbol of controversy. Raffaele Sollecito, an Italian youth, became a figure trapped in a labyrinthine legal system. Rudy Guede, the most overtly guilty party, had been swiftly convicted, but his role only complicated the story. As 2010 approached, the world watched with bated breath. Appeals were filed, forensic evidence would be re-examined, and the legal battle would stretch on for years. The murder of Meredith Kercher had unleashed not only a criminal investigation but a media storm, a cultural debate, and a case study in how justice, suspicion, and perception intersect. Part 4: Appeals, Final Verdicts, and the Search for Justice. After the December 2009 convictions, Amanda Knox and Raffaele Sollecito's legal teams immediately filed appeals. According to their lawyers, the first trial had relied on incomplete or flawed evidence, mishandled forensic work, and inconsistent witness statements. The goal of the appeal was not merely to reduce sentences, but to secure a fair, transparent verdict that reflected the true circumstances of Meredith Kercher's murder. Appeals hearings began in early 2010 and would stretch over months. Lawyers challenged every piece of evidence, arguing that the forensic procedures were sloppy or improperly conducted. The DNA evidence, Amanda's DNA on the knife handle and Raffaele's on Meredith's bra clasp, was particularly contested. Defense experts claimed contamination, procedural errors, or misinterpretation. Some evidence, such as DNA found on Meredith's clothing, was complicated and highly disputed. The defense emphasized that circumstantial or flawed forensic evidence should never form the sole basis for a conviction. Amanda and Raffaele also addressed the court personally. Amanda explained that she had always been Meredith's friend and had been traumatized by her death. Raffaele, quieter and reserved, maintained that he had never participated in any act of violence. Despite their arguments, the prosecution repeated its theory. The murder had been the result of a violent sexual game involving all three suspects. Meanwhile, media coverage continued to dominate public perception. International news outlets closely followed the appeals, often portraying Amanda in contrasting ways. Some depicted her as innocent, others as deceitful. Public opinion remained sharply divided, with debates about culture, personality, and behavior overshadowing the legal facts. In 2011, the appellate court ordered a thorough re-examination of the forensic evidence. Many aspects of the original reports were deemed unreliable, particularly the DNA results from the knife and bra clasp. The review revealed errors in collection, handling, and testing of critical evidence, undermining the prosecution's narrative. By 2013, the appellate court reached a historic decision. Amanda Knox and Raffaele Sollecito were fully acquitted of all charges. The court explained that the original trial had relied on flawed forensic analysis and insufficient evidence to establish guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The verdict emphasized that the standard of proof required for a conviction had not been met. The release of Amanda and Raffaele reverberated worldwide. In Italy, reactions were mixed. Some were shocked, some relieved. In the United States and the United Kingdom, there was widespread celebration, particularly among those who had supported Amanda throughout the ordeal. Her family expressed immense relief and gratitude, highlighting that the court's decision offered a chance to rebuild her life. Amanda returned to the United States, determined to move on from the ordeal, the media scrutiny, and the false accusations. Raffaele chose to resume a quiet life in Italy, away from the public eye and international media attention. Rudy Guede, however, remained in prison. His conviction had been upheld, and he was serving a reduced sentence after his fast-track trial. The court confirmed that he was the only individual directly responsible for Meredith Kercher's murder, whereas Amanda and Raffaele's involvement could not be proven. For Meredith's family, the appellate decision was emotional and bittersweet. While they had sought justice for their daughter, they also recognized that the legal system had its limits. Meredith's life had been taken, and no verdict could undo the loss. Yet the court's ruling restored a sense of fairness and clarified the actual degree of responsibility among the accused. The case became a landmark example not only of criminal investigation, but also of media influence, cultural perception, and the challenges of the justice system. Amanda and Raffaele's acquittal highlighted the dangers of relying on flawed or circumstantial evidence and underscored the importance of fair trials, careful forensic procedures, and the protection of defendants' rights. Lessons were drawn worldwide. Legal experts emphasized proper forensic handling, adherence to procedural standards, and safeguarding due process. The media also learned the perils of sensationalism. Reporting allegations as fact can permanently damage lives and distort public perception. Ultimately, the murder of Meredith Kercher illustrated the complexities of justice. It is not merely about punishment, but about uncovering the truth, evaluating evidence impartially, and resisting the influence of public opinion. Amanda Knox, once vilified in the press, emerged acquitted and free, while Raffaele Sollecito quietly resumed his life in Italy. Rudy Guede remained accountable for the crime, serving the sentence assigned to him. The story serves as both a cautionary tale and a reminder. Justice requires patience, diligence, and humility before the facts. It reminds the world that human error, media frenzy, and flawed investigation can imperil fairness. But through careful appeal and examination, truth can ultimately prevail. Meredith Kercher's tragic death left an indelible mark on everyone connected to the case. For her family, it remained a deeply personal loss. For Amanda and Raffaele, it was a harrowing ordeal that tested their resilience and faith in the legal system. And for the public and legal communities, it became a reference point for discussions on justice, evidence, and the power of perception. In the end, the case closed not just with a verdict, but with a set of lessons about truth, fairness, and human fallibility. A reminder that behind every sensational story are real people whose lives are forever changed.